After Jesus had dinner with his disciples, he went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee with him, and he became sorrowful and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you'll not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak."
As he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. The betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." Going directly to Jesus, Judas said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. And then the men seized Jesus and arrested him.
At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Messiah," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you won't believe me, and if I asked you, you wouldn't answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" And he replied, "You say I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips."
Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. "You also were with Jesus of Galilee," she said, but he denied it before all of them. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him, and said to the people there, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it, with an oath, "I don't know the man." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses on them, and swore to them, saying, "I don't know the man." Immediately a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken. "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And Peter wept bitterly.
The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked Jesus, "Aren't you going to answer? Don't you see how many things they've accused you of?" But Jesus made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. Now it was the custom at the Passover festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas, who had committed murder in the uprising, was in prison with the insurrectionists. Pilate asked the crowd if they wanted him to release the King of the Jews, knowing it was out of self-interest that the chief priests had handed over Jesus. But the priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "So what shall I do with the one you call King of the Jews?" he asked. "Crucify him," they shouted. "But what crime has he committed?" The crowd wouldn't stop shouting, "Crucify! Crucify!" So to satisfy them, Pilate released Barabbas.
Pilate sent Jesus to be flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They slapped him in the face and spit on him. Pilate tried again to set him free, but the leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar." So Pilate brought Jesus out and sat him on the judge's seat. "Here is your king," he said to the Jews. But they shouted, "Take him away, crucify him," and yelled, "We have no king but Caesar." So Pilate handed him over to be crucified and washed his hands of the ordeal.
So the soldiers took charge of Jesus. Carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha.
Again and again the soldiers struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him as he stumbled with the cross. The soldiers seized Simon from Cyrene, put the cross on him, and made him carry it behind Jesus.
A large number of people followed Jesus, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you'll say, 'Blessed are the childless women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if people do these things when the field is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
When they came to the place of the skull, they crucified him, along with criminals. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." The soldiers divided his clothes by casting lots. And the people watching, even the rulers, sneered and said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he's God's Messiah." The soldiers mocked him and offered wine vinegar. And a sign above read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung beside Jesus hurled insults at him. But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God, since you're under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answered, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise."
Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her in his home.
It is finished. And with that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
The next day was to be a special Sabbath. Because the Jewish leaders didn't want the bodies left on the crosses, they asked Pilate to have legs broken and the bodies taken down. The soldiers broke the legs of the men who had been crucified with Jesus, but when they came to him, he was already dead, and they didn't break his legs. Instead, a soldier pierced his side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. The man who saw it gave testimony, so that you also may believe.
Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he took the body away and was accompanied by Nicodemus. He brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes. Taking the body, the two wrapped it with spices and strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. Near the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in it a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. They laid Jesus there.